Hey guys, Luke and Shaun's channel. Today I'm going to be doing a deck profile. This is Superheavy Samurai. So we got a little bit neutered now that our Link 1 is gone, so we can't do our crazy one card combo anymore. The deck's still very strong, still has a lot of meta contention. So I'm going to go through the deck, extra deck, and also a little side deck option for you as well. So yeah, let's just get into it. Start off strong, we have 3 copies of Prodigy. This is a great card. A really good pendulum, which this deck definitely really needed the extra support to boost it up. So it's a 8 scale. It's also a level 4 tuner. What's great about this is if it's in the pendulum zone, you can activate effect to put another Superheavy Samurai monster with a different name in the other pendulum zone, which will be Big Benkei. We'll get into him in a little bit. And then you can special summon out Prodigy himself. Also, if he's used as material for a Synchro summon and sent to the extra deck, you can actually put him into your pendulum zone. Also, he has a monster effect, which doesn't come up too often, but it's also good to just note that if you have no spells or traps in your graveyard, you can discard one monster, especially one Superheavy Samurai monster from your hand or deck into defense position, but then that locks you into Superheavy Samurai monsters for the rest of the turn, which you know, can be a bit problematic, but that's good in certain situations. But definitely run 3 of this guy in the deck. He is very, very essential. Now, the other pendulum, we of course have Big Benkei. The pendulums were pretty much the maker of the decks. This is what makes this deck really, really good. It is a 1 scale. So most of the time you're only using Big Benkei as filler to get the full effect off of Prodigy. But he also has some like fairly decent effects himself. One being that in the Pendulum Zone, if you control a Superheavy Samurai monster, you can add 1 Superheavy Samurai Soul monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use the effect of this once per turn. He also has a monster effect, but it's very rare that you bring him out. You can't even Pendulum Summon with him in this deck because he is a level 8, and since Prodigy's pen scale is 8, you can't bring out Benkei off this, because of course if your scales are 1 to 8, then you can only bring out monsters level 2 to 7 when you're pendulum summoning. But he also has a monster effect if you do manage to bring him out. If you have no spells or traps in your graveyard, you can send 1 Superheavy Samurai Benkei from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do special summon this card from your hand, which, you know, it could be pretty good because he has 3500 defense, and you know the gimmick with most Super Heavy Samurai monsters, they can attack while they're in defense position. Now, some very old cards that are just too broken. We have 3 copies of Super Heavy Samurai Soulpiercer. So of course with a lot of these Super Heavy Samurai cards, their main gimmick is that they can attack from the hand to other Super Heavy Samurai monsters, and they kind of have effects off this. If he's attached to a Super Heavy Samurai monster, that monster can inflict piercing damage. But also, if his card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Super Heavy Samurai monster from your deck to your hand, except for Soulpiercer, and that is not stated as a once per turn, because this is a very old card, so they didn't think that would be broken nowadays. 3 copies of Bike, Super Heavy Samurai Motorbike that is. He's a level 2 tuner. He's very, very great for this deck because he also works as a searcher. So if you know spells or traps in your graveyard, you can discard this card, add 1 Super Heavy Samurai monster from your deck to your hand. And he's also very important for a combo that gets us into a Baronne. I should mention that a lot of these effects of Super Heavy Samurais, they only activate if you have no spells or traps in your graveyard. So this deck is, besides the pendulums, it's all monsters. 3 copies of Super Heavy Samurai Wagon. Wagon is decent. I kind of find him a little bit overrated, but like there isn't as many great Super Heavy Samurai monsters that we can like throw in. But Wagon is still pretty good because once card's normal special summon, you can change the battle position. This card can attack while in face of defense position, like most Super Heavy Samurai cards. And also, if you have no spells or traps in the graveyard, you can change this face-up defense position card you control to attack position, and if you do, you can add 1 Super Heavy Samurai Soul monster from your deck to your hand. So it's a good searcher, not as strong as Bike or Soulpiercer, but still good to have as many searchers for the consistency of this deck. I run 3 copies of Soulgaia Booster. A lot of people will probably disagree with this, But I find Soulgaia Booster to be very good because it's pretty much just a good extender. So the main purpose of Soulgaia Booster is while he's in your hand, you can attach him to a Superheavy Samurai monster on the field, and then if he's attached as an equip spell in that sense, he can also just special summon himself out in defense position that way. So it's good for your simple rank 4s. In case this deck breaks on the rare occasion, it's good to kind of just have a level 4, equip with Soulgaia Booster, bring out Soulgaia Booster, and just go for your Babushka play just to try and earn yourself some time. So definitely 3 copies of Soulgaia Booster in my opinion is very good for this deck. 1 copy of Scales, 1 copy of Stealthy, and then 1 copy of Soulpeacemaker. Literally only 1 copy of each of these is good enough. I don't see any reason to run any more than 1 copy. I did kind of experiment with Stealthy, but just being a level 1, he's not really as good as one would want it to be. Same can be said for Soulpeacemaker. Good for links, but never really good here for when you're going into XZs, and I find the XZ engine along with the Synchro engine to be way more powerful than any of the Link engine we have in this deck. But yeah, 1 copy of each of these guys is definitely the way to go. So don't run any more than that. I think Soulgaia Booster is definitely more important than 3 than these guys. 1 Ancient Gear box because you run Ballista in this deck, and good thing about box is if he's added to your hand, except by drawing it, you can add 1 Earth Machine type monster with 500 attack and / or defense from your deck to your hand, except for Box himself. And this is good because it's able to search us or Infinitrack Tunneller. And Tunneller is pretty good. He can bring himself out easily in defense position by attributing 1 Earth Machine on the field, and also when he's in the grave you can banish him to pretty much work as a Pot of Avarice. So this is a nice little engine to run the deck. I definitely recommend running 1 of each. Stepping a little bit out of budget territory, here is Therion King Regulus. King Regulus is really good. It's very consistent with this deck because almost every monster in this deck is a machine monster. So super easy to bring out Therion King Regulus for a nice little Omni Negate. We also got Jizukiru, the Star Destroying Kaiju. It's good to have just a Kaiju in the main deck that you're able to kind of search and summon, and also easily remove too. So definitely running 1 of these Kaijus in the main deck is definitely essential. Besides the Soulgaia Booster, this is where the deck really stands out in its uniqueness, is 2 copies of Heavy Freight Train Derricrane. This guy is very good for our link plays because it's just another Earth Machine that we can use to link off into our better monsters. But also, since it's level 10, it gives us a good excuse to run a Gustav Max into extra deck, which of course is very good if you're stuck and trying to win for time. 1 copy of Pank. This is where we're kind of stepping away from the Earth Machines now and just kind of going into our extra little extenders and little bonuses of this deck. So Pank running at 1. Going to round things off. We're going to speed through the hand traps. We're on 3 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Droll, 3 copies of Effect Failure, 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, and just for some variety I run 2 copies of Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. This deck, of course, as I said before, it's all monsters, so as you can see that's all 41 cards of this deck. So there's no spells or traps because you don't really get the full effect of all of your Superheavy Samurai monsters if you have spells or traps in this deck. So definitely don't run any spells or traps, not even a continuous or a field spell, because they can easily be removed and they'll fuck up all your combos. Going into our extra deck now, we're going to start off with the Synchro. So you run 1 copy of Baronne. Baronne is just a really good Omni Negate. Level 10, he's very easy to bring out with a combo that we might specify in a later video. But anyone who's getting into this deck knows the easy way to bring out Baronne. It's definitely run it at 1 in this deck. Also run Borreload Savage Dragon. It's very easy to go for rank 4s, but also very easy to go into our Synchro 8s as well. And the fact that we run a good few links in this build just means that Borreload Savage Dragon is very good because it brings out a few little Omni Negates in that as well. Stardust Dragon is here because it goes alongside our Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon. This is the kind of combo that gets us into Baronne, but if your opponent has an interruption for Ass Dragon when you're going into that combo, you can actually chain Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon's effect to get rid of him to bring out the Stardust to kind of stop the interaction with your opponent if they're trying to Ghost Ogre or whatever. So definitely 1 of each of these guys is very good for this deck. It's very good to bring out Baronne, and I find it very essential for the build. The only like extra deck Super Heavy Samurai that's even worth bringing out is Ninja Sarutobi. Mostly just because he's very good for spell and trap card removal on your opponent's side, because he can actually destroy spells or traps once per turn just by the cost of paying, just by having no spell or traps in your own graveyard. And also, if he does destroy that spell or trap, it inflicts 500 damage to your opponent. So, you know, it's also good for kind of like winning for time as well. Definitely only run of one. I don't really run too many Super Heavy Samurai monsters in the extra deck. It's all in the main deck that they really get their power from. Going into our XZs, as I mentioned earlier, number 41 Babushka, just a really nice floodgate in case we get really bricky. That's why we run 3 Soulgaia booster, just because we're able to bring out rank 4s easily enough with this deck. So definitely run Babushka at 1. Speaking of good rank 4s that can kind of be devastating to your opponent, Abyss Dweller, if you're facing against a graveyard heavy deck, Abyss Dweller is kind of a nice way to kind of deal with that and shut down your opponent a little bit. And now Spring's Merrymaker is very good because we're able to make rank 4s, and then overlay easily for Gigantic Champion Sargus, which of course kind of brings out our with Searches Us or Therion King Regulus, but also since these guys don't detach material to kind of use their effect, they make very good fodder for Zeus, which we also run in this build. So yeah, you pretty much have like a double effect of Zeus when you're bringing them out using these guys. Final card, Gustav Max. I just find this good to be with the train engine. Good for kind of like burning for time and stuff like that. We have like a lot of little ways to kind of burn our opponent, like being the Super Heavy Samurai, Ninja, and then also Gustav Max can be pretty good. Because, you know, if you're really stuck for burning for time, it's always good to have kind of like ways to just do it so you can win the duel. So I definitely recommend running that. Next up we have Ancient Gear Ballista. Shout out to all of Shaun's Ancient Gear content on this channel. Check it out. Ballista is very good because Search Us or Box, and then as you've already mentioned earlier, Box, Searches Us or Tunneller, and this is just a very good card overall. Especially good in Ancient Gears, but it's nice to see that Ancient Gears kind of make their way into other Earth Machine decks. So definitely running out 1 is very good for this build. I also run Quillfort Genius. Since we run Pendulums, it's very easy to get the effect of this guy. The effect being that if 2 monsters are summoned to the zones these cards point to, you can search your deck for a level 5 or higher machine monster. So it's good to get your Therion King Regulus, any of your trains, or even your Kaiju if you're really looking for them. So Quillfort Genius running at 1 this deck. We're also pretty good at kind of like spamming the board, so we're find 1 copy of Apollosa to be very good for this build. I will say be careful when it comes to having Apollosa and Baronne on the field as well, because you know, that new Super Poly target, since Apollosa and Baronne are both wind monsters with different names, you can easily get Super Poly and lose 2 of your best monsters at once. So please be careful, but you know, same can be said for Lava Golem. And just rounding off the final monster in this is just Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker is very good. It goes for the OTKs very easily. You can run this in pretty much any deck you want and it'll still serve you a good purpose. So Access Code Talker at 1, definitely very good. Now kind of finishing things off with the side deck. So I already said that you don't want to have any spells or traps in this build, so we're not even running any continuouses in the side deck, but a good way to use spell or trap removal is Archfiend Eccentric. So Archfiend Eccentric is a pendulum monster that when you put it in the pendulum zone, you can use it to destroy itself and a spell that your opponent controls. And since this goes face up in the extra deck after you activate that, it doesn't have a spell in your graveyard. It's just good spell or trap removal without the cost of losing all of your effective Super Heavy Samurai stuff. Now we don't really have any good ways to kind of go against banishing decks, so I run 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. I find it to be very good for this deck, because you never know, there's always decks that banish, always rogue decks that try to pull some bullshit. So Artifact Lancia is very good. Can also be used against Kashtira and also Runic. So Artifact Lancia is very, very good. 2 copies of Spellcancellor is Machine Monster, so it bodes very well with this deck because you're able to search it off of a few different things, and also you're able to Pendulum Summon, so you don't really have to waste your Tribute Summon with Spellcancellor. You can bring it out with the pen skills. So yeah, Spellcancellor is very good. It shuts down a lot of decks, including Runic and Sky Striker, so running at 3 might be a bit excessive. But running at 2 in the side deck is definitely very good. If you want to main deck this thing instead of your trains, that's perfectly fine too. I just find the trains to be better in the first round because you're able to kind of like pop off more easier with your combos. But Spellcancellor is always a very, very good option for this deck. And also run 2 copies of Nibiru for going against combo decks because you never know. Rikas are doing a lot of damage with their combos lately, and Nibiru is able to shut them down if you use it correctly. So 2 copies of Nibiru as well. And now just to kind of like round things off, I find Bestials are very, very good because they kind of shut down a few decks in the sense that they can banish Rays off of Sky Strikers, which is devastating to Sky Strikers in general. And also they're just big guys, they can search each other as well. And they're just good for going in for damage, or if you want to use them as Night materials, that's no problem at all as well. But definitely run a small package of probably 5 Bestials, could be very, very good for this build. So that about does it for a deck profile. Please let me know what you think. I'm very happy with this build. I know we were kind of neutered, as I said earlier, by getting rid of our Link 1, but you know, I still like making decks work even when they lose their Link 1. Shout out to little prank dudes that I'm still playing to this day. So yeah, I find this deck to be very good, very competitively viable. I would definitely recommend picking it up. It's very, very fun. And it's just unique playing a deck that runs no spells or traps, because you know you're used to seeing decks that run all traps, like Labyrinth decks with all spells like Sky Strikers. So a deck that can stand out by just using monsters, I find to be very, very cool. So definitely try out this deck. Please let me know what you think. Just check out the other content on the channel. We also did a live duel with me using this deck. So definitely check all those out. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.